Hi, friends.
Nice.
Welcome to Chapter 13, March 25th, 2011, from Teruya International Airport, Tokyo, Japan.
Go ahead.
Okay. Ben sat between Mom and Harry on the airplane. Soon they would take off. It was 2 weeks after the wave, and they were heading home.
The stewardess came by for the third time and asked Mom to please turn off her phone. Mom was talking to Dr. Sato. They'd been working together nonstop these past 2 weeks, trying to get supplies to Shogahama. Mom's friends in the Air Force were helping. Finally, Mom said goodbye to Dr. Sato and turned off her phone. She smiled at Ben, put her head back, and closed her eyes. None of them had slept much lately. Harry had Nia's cage on his lap. He was giving the old cat one last scratch on the head before he'd have to put her under the seat. Ojison had asked them to take Nia home with them to keep an eye on her. Of course, they were happy about that. Ben looked at the scar on Harry's arm. "Your scar is cooler than Darth Vader's," Ben said. "Way cooler," Henry said with a grin. Harry, I'm sorry. Thank you. It amazed Ben that Harry had come through the disaster with no other injuries. But by some miracle, Mom and Harry and Ojison had managed to stay together after they fell out of the car. The water had swept them into the parking garage of Shogahama's only apartment building. They'd rushed up the stairway just steps ahead of the wave. They'd made it to the roof, waiting there with dozens of other people until the water subsided. What subsided mean?
I have no idea.
Gone down. Like all of them, Harry had seen some terrible things. He was having nightmares almost every night. Loud noises made him jump. You know what they call that when you have nightmares about some tragic event?
What?
Post, like after, traumatic stress disorder. They call it PTSD. Post-traumatic stress disorder. So it sounds like that's what he's got, huh?
Yep.
Ben, too. Ben knew how lucky they were to be together, that they were safe. But it was hard to feel happy when there was so much sadness all around. The quake had been the strongest ever to hit Japan, the fourth strongest ever recorded in the world. The tsunami had destroyed towns and cities up and down the Japanese coast for hundreds of miles. Thousands and thousands of people had died, and thousands more were still missing. There had been some happy moments at the school, like when Akira's parents finally came, and then Hideki's, but many people couldn't find their relatives. In the end, it was Kazu's aunt from Tokyo who came to pick him up. And just when it seemed the news couldn't get scarier, there was another disaster. The quake and wave had damaged a nuclear power station in a place called Fukushima. I've heard about that one. About 40 miles up the coast from Shogahama. Radioactive particles were leaking out of the power plant. Even small amounts of radiation can make people very sick, especially children. People living close to the plant had to flee their homes. For a while, people worried that the radioactive cloud could spread to Shogahama or beyond. These past few days, the news from Fukushima had been a little bit better. The winds had shifted, blowing the poisonous gases out to sea. And
Poisonous clouds.
Thank you. And life in Shogahama had improved too. Some of the roads to the village were finally clear, so food and water were coming into the town. Ben was keeping a close eye on Harry, and of course, they had their Jedi cat to protect them. What worried them all was what would happen to Ojison. His house was gone. Many of his friends were gone too. They begged him to come back to California with them, at least for a few months, Mom had said. But Ojison refused, and Ben came to understand why. 2 days ago, he and Ojison finally took a walk together. They'd made their way into the hills. Just this last chapter here. Above the school, they looked over at the village below. Ben could see the tears in Ojison's eyes as he stared at the sea of mud and wreckage, but he also heard the determination of his uncle's voice. "We will clean up," he said. we will build new houses. All right, we'll stop there. So, dog ear it. You know what to read tomorrow?
There we go.
Bye-bye.
Bye, friends.